In this edition of Sea Power, we'll view a few of the battleships of the 20th century. From their beginning, their refinement, then to their removal in favour of the aircraft carrier. And to close, we'll see one of the grandest in retirement. In the early 1900s, the wealth and status of a nation was directly measured by the size of its battleships. These shots of American ironclads show the state of the art at the turn of the century. The term battleship was a new contrivance to describe the largest, most powerful of these capital ships. The famous dreadnought was birthed in 1904. However, by this time, technology had also taken to the air. The Texas, patterned after dreadnought and commissioned in 1914, was the last of the true battleships. For a time, she was considered the most powerful warship afloat because of her 10 14-inch guns in 5 twin turrets. The Texas auspiciously went on to participate in both the First and Second World Wars. In 1914, the Great War saw for the first time huge technological advances in weaponry. One of these advances, the airplane, came to the fore in the war against the early submarines. The dawning of flight required some reappraisal in the uses and threats that these new weapons could pose. At the time, naval stalwarts would not believe that the flimsy fabric and string insects could threaten their battleships, which were built to withstand the fire of other battleships. Battleship construction progressed steadily through the early 1900s. However, in 1922, with construction costs spiralling out of control and threatening to bankrupt countries, the Washington Naval Reduction Treaty was signed to halt the battleship arms race. When the United States signed the treaty, they agreed to halt construction of 13 new battleships and battle cruisers presently under construction. 2 hulls went on to become the largest aircraft carriers in the world, the Lexington and Saratoga. And the rest was scrapped. Aircraft during this time were taken on as a part of the fleet, but only as reconnaissance units. They would be used to find enemy ships and targets, then guide the fleet to within range and allow the big guns to take over, while calling as a spotter the fall of shot. In the years after World War I, military thinking saw the advances that could be made in air warfare. And some far-sighted pundits professed that these new planes would eventually replace the capital ships of nations. By 1920, the battleship was still the authority of naval task forces. Developments had rapidly advanced their weapons and protected coverings with armoured decks and waterline belts protecting them against incoming attacks. If there were to be any threat from the air, the battleship would easily adapt, as it had previously, to these new, as yet unseen dangers. In America in 1921, it was determined to silence the raging debates between the new air arm and the existing naval theorists. A series of tests would be performed to finally qualify the reality of the threat presented by the formative Air Force. Planes would be sent to sink naval shipping from the air. The trial took the form of bombing one ship of each size: a submarine, a destroyer, a cruiser, and finally a battleship. The ships would be attacked successively with bigger and bigger bombs, and inspections would take place after each attack. All armed forces would take turns in the attacks, and the trials would culminate in the big event of the bombing of the battleship Ostfriesland. The war prize Ostfriesland was large at 22,000 tons and was considered to be a significant test of the new theories. As a new ship, it was designed against attack from existing battleships of the day. Tests against Ostfriesland began on July 20, when Navy and Maritime Corps planes dropped 52 bombs on the ship, and ended dramatically the next day when Martin bombers delivered the fatal blow with 11 1,000 and 2,000 pound bombs. Today, the debate rages as to whether the test had any real validity. The targets were all stationary and had no damage control or fire parties. Had they the ability to move and repair damage, the result may have been significantly different. The Ostfriesland itself stayed afloat under sustaining significant damage over a period of a day and a half. Only the final 2,000 pound bomb signalled the end, but even then she took hours to sink. Over the ensuing years, significant numbers of ageing battleships met the same sad end, while the advancements in naval power and aviation technology continued apace. When the Naval Reduction Treaty came to an end in 1936, the United States then began to build what were to become known as the fast battleships. Speed was now deemed critical to keep up with the new aircraft carriers of the fast carrier attack groups. The early battleships had a top speed of around 22 knots. However, when other navies produced 24-knot battleships and 30-knot battle cruisers, the newer North Carolina and South Dakota class battleships were made capable of 28 knots. And the new Iowa class ships would be capable of speeds in excess of 33 knots. A final class, the Montanas, were to be nearly half again as big as the Iowa class and have a maximum speed of 28 knots. Although authorised and designed, none of this class ever entered construction, as the emphasis shifted to the construction of the aircraft carriers during the Second World War. December 7, 1941. Japan used their combined Pacific Fleet in the infamous Pearl Harbor attack, consisting of 2 fast battleships, 6 aircraft carriers, 8 destroyers, 3 cruisers and submarine escorts, and a total of 360 aircraft. There had never been such an overwhelming force assembled in the Pacific arena. The attack was over in little more than 3 hours. By the end of the day, most of the US Pacific Fleet lay broken and burning. The loss of 5 battleships, Arizona, Oklahoma, California, West Virginia and Nevada, and the damage to the Maryland, Tennessee and Pennsylvania in the raid was a truly devastating blow to the American naval forces in the Pacific. However, the 3 American carriers were not damaged, having been deployed to reinforce advanced bases at Aweigh and Midway. This one fact allowed the remaining forces to hold the Midway-Hawaii front and defend the supply lines to Australia. It would not be until the last great battleship engagement in history, the Battle of Leyte Gulf in October of 1944, that battleships would again play major roles in the Pacific War. 2 Iowa-class battleships, the Iowa and the New Jersey, as well as several old battleships refitted from their damage from the Pearl Harbor attack, would face the Japanese super battleships Yamato and Musashi, and many older ships from the First World War. The fall of the Philippines would be a terrible blow to the Japanese, as it controlled most of the fuel for the fleet. After the Battle of the Philippine Sea, dubbed the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot by American pilots, Japan had only a handful of planes and even fewer pilots to man them. So plans were drawn up for a huge naval attack against the US forces. The result would be an all-or-nothing gamble for the Japanese Navy. Nothing was held back. The The Japanese 65,000-ton battleship Yamato was built in 1941 at Kure, Japan. She and her sister Musashi were by far the largest battleships ever built, even exceeding in size and gun caliber of the US Navy's cancelled Montana class. Their 9 18.1-inch main battery guns, which fired 3,200-pound armour-piercing shells, were the largest battleship guns ever to go to sea, and the scale of the two ships' armour protection was also unsurpassed. The Musashi was finally lost on the 24th of October during the Leyte Gulf battles. Her extensive protection ultimately failed her after being subjected to 20 torpedo hits, 17 bomb hits, and the destructive force of the detonation of 16 near misses in the water. At about 7:30 in the evening, 4.5 hours after the last attack, she would finally roll over and sink. The Yamato would use its large guns in Leyte against US escort carriers, but she would never fire on her American equivalents. Halsey's fleet of fast battleships sailed ineffectually between the two major engagements of Leyte, unable to participate due to confusion in the messages sent between the individual fleets. And so an era came to a close. The battleship never again fired guns at an enemy ship. And yet, even as the age of the battleship ended, overrun by the power of the aircraft carrier, only the disengagement of the Japanese forces at the last minute saved the day for the Americans at Leyte. The carriers would now become the king of the fleet, and within a year, the war would be over. The Nagato would be the sole Japanese battleship to survive the war. However, after the conflict, she joined her distant cousins, the American battleships Arkansas, New York, Nevada, and Pennsylvania. The Nagato would be sunk at Bikini Atoll, near the German cruiser Prinz Eugen, during the testing of atomic weapons. At the close of the war, however, it was again the grandness of the battleship that was chosen for the formal surrender of the Imperial forces. USS Missouri played host to the cessation of hostilities in the Pacific from the Bay of Tokyo. On September 2, 1945, amid the wreckage of the once proud Japanese fleet, the Missouri transmitted the ceasefire message. And on her foredeck, the signing of the official surrender was confirmed. The Iowa-class ships went on to see active service again in the Korean conflict and were used for shore bombardment in support of ground troops. Their mere presence and large guns were a huge asset in any conflict. However, with the spiralling costs of running 4 ships, they were all decommissioned by the late 1950s. Due to calls from the Marines, the New Jersey was reactivated for the Vietnam conflict in 1968, but again mothballed in 1969. During the 1980s, all 4 Iowas were recommissioned and significantly modernized. They were all converted to using light diesel fuel, and communications received enormous upgrades. They also received weapons upgrades with the addition of 16 Harpoon anti-shipping missiles and 32 Tomahawk cruise missiles for conventional or nuclear shore attack and enemy shipping. Their large 16-inch guns were maintained, and 6 of their original twin 5-inch guns were also kept. The existing range of the 16-inch guns of 24 miles was nearly doubled with new sub-caliber rounds. The addition of harpoon missiles for surface-to-surface combatants extended their effectiveness. With a range in excess of 67 nautical miles and surface skimming the water, the harpoons greatly extended the operational sphere of the Great Ladies. However, it was the addition of the Tomahawk cruise missiles where they again rose in stature during the 1991 Desert Shield operation. With a range of 1,500 miles, these small pilotless planes are incredibly accurate and capable of delivering conventional warheads or nuclear stores. By the mid-90s though, all of these great battleships had again been decommissioned. Two, Iowa and Wisconsin, were in mothballs. The other two, Missouri and New Jersey, were serving a new purpose as restored museum pieces and memorials to their great places in history. Today, the US Navy is without an active battleship. However, many of the Grand Ladies are still accessible to the public. One of the greatest of all is the Texas. The battleship Texas is the last dreadnought in existence in the world. A veteran of Vera Cruz and both World Wars. Having been designed in the first decade of the 20th century, and having seen action in some of the most intense and critical campaigns of World War II, she is an important piece of our naval and maritime history. These are sea cadets spending a weekend aboard the Texas. These cadets will join over 100 other men and women participating in the annual Battle Stations 1944 event, a recreation of life aboard the Texas during World War II. When the Texas was commissioned in 1914, she was the most powerful weapon on Earth. Today, she is the US's oldest surviving battleship. With a crew of up to 1,800 men living in her 572-foot hull, sailors served their country and made sacrifices in the name of the service and country. The Sea Cadets live all aspects of life on board, including preparing meals, cleaning, and getting used to the confines of life at sea. To many, it leaves a new understanding of the trials and sacrifices made by the men that crewed the Texas.
Hot stuff coming through.
See. May I go get my iced tea?
To those people truly interested in history, it is not enough to read a book about it or watch a film about the Texas. Here you can feel and smell what it was actually like. It's probably as close as you can get to time travel.
Just wipe it down then. Get the finger marks off. It gives them a sense of feel of what it's really like.
Now hear this. Now hear this. All hands, man your battle station. All hands, man your battle station.
A portion of each day is set aside for the Living History program, where the general public can come aboard and explore different aspects of the ship. The high point for the reenactors is when the public, especially the children, make the realization that the stories are all true, that the history they've been told is real.
Oh, look at this, guys. You want to see what it's like to get a cruise?
There's a lot of symbolism associated with the Texas and what she represents.
And you're going to be madly calling these numbers out, and there'll be 2 or 3 other guys here doing this.
Many of the sea cadets did not know what living on board a battleship really entailed before they arrived. But all will leave and be slightly changed by their experiences. As time passes, the cadets will better understand what this ship represents: honor, responsibility, and personal sacrifice. The Battleship Texas is a unique teaching tool. Her battle is far from over, as she has a new generation to serve.
In this episode of Sea Power, we investigate the lineage of ships through the 2nd, 3rd and 4th generations of development since World War II. The Second World War set forth staggering advancements in traditional maritime warfare practices and technologies. The close of World War II was the dawning of a new conflict, the Cold War, and although no serious shots were fired, the world was ill at ease as the major players continued to develop and perfect their nuclear delivery systems. Like the Second World War, the Cold War was also a catalyst for conventional warfare development. Today, a single 4th-generation destroyer-class vessel has more firepower than an entire fleet of World War II battleships. Technology after the Second World War moved so quickly that today we have 3rd-generation naval-class ships and are already moving into the 4th generation of vessels. After World War II, the focus was on nuclear bomb delivery and was the major priority of the superpowers, and the future role of the naval fleet was much questioned. It became evident very quickly that nuclear bombs would not replace the fleets, as most new conflicts were not going to warrant the devastation or the fallout a nuclear attack would invoke. The modern war remained more likely to be traditional, and therefore conventional weapons also received sweeping development. The Cold War was a standoff, and although nuclear armament was advancing, the conventional armed forces also developed at neck-breaking speed.
50 seconds. There it goes. Now.
Shack. Yes.
Through the FCF.
There they go. Got a good hit. Luger octane 370.
Today, a large contingent would contain many vessels and include carriers, frigates and destroyers. Replenishing vessels are also assigned and play an important role in keeping the battle group on station for extended periods. As the development moved into 3rd-generation naval ships, a German company developed the MECO system of ship construction. The development of the 3 basic design principles were modularity, improvement in survivability, and signature reduction. Today, the MECO system is still subject to continuous optimization. MECO platforms are designed specifically for the varied development of standardized module weapons, electronics and the ship's technical equipment, which, in addition, are connected with the power supply, the air conditioning and ventilation system. All the components needed to run a specific system are accommodated in a single module. Depending on the particular task they are required to perform, a distinction is made between weapons, electronics, and the ship's technical modules. Containers, pallets, and mast modules are installed during the construction phase. To the customer, modularity means an immense range of choice in the selection of the onboard systems, whether it be with regard to the integration of customer-supplied systems or the use of products that the customer already has in service from various manufacturers. This principle of dedicated sectional design has been the subject of continuous refinement and expansion throughout the last 30 years of its development. In later examples, the infrared signature has been significantly reduced by dispensing with stacks and instead conducting the exhaust to the rear. Seawater spraying into the exhaust pipes, now arranged horizontally, lowers the emission temperature to less than 100 degrees Celsius. The MECO system made it possible to retrofit and convert the ships without difficulty in the shortest possible time and at a competitive cost. This is an early MECO 360 class destroyer. The Almirante Brown is an Argentinian destroyer, and she was built by Bohm and Voss in Hamburg from 1978 and was launched on March the 28th, 1981. Here, the vessel is undergoing sea trials. Sea trials are conducted to test all the systems and mechanical equipment. When the ship has passed these tests, the customer takes delivery and conducts trials of their own agenda, which may take as long as 12 months to complete. The Almirante Brown was the first of this class to be put into service and is armed with 8 Aerospatial Exocet MM-40 missiles, 1 OTO Melara 5-inch gun, 8 Bofor 40mm guns, 6 324mm torpedo tubes, and 2 Breeder 105mm S-Class chaff rocket launchers. She is powered by 2 Rolls-Royce Olympus TM3B gas turbines, which provide 51,600 shp and a top speed of 30.5 knots with a range of 7,200 kilometres. She carries 2 Aerospatial SA-319B Alouette 3 helicopters for anti-submarine defence and has a crew of 26 officers and 174 men. Based on a modified German MECO 200 design, the 10 Anzac-class frigates are the major surface units of the Royal Australian Navy and Royal New Zealand Navy. The vessels were built using modular construction techniques. Hull and superstructure modules were built in both New Zealand and Australia, and the final fit-out was conducted at the Williamstown shipyards in Melbourne, Australia. Australia made further modifications to their vessels. An upward creep in ship manning led the RAN to undertake a habitability upgrade study. Additional restructuring to the Marine Engineering Department resulted in a change in the rank and billet structure, creating a need to rework some habitation areas. Hospitability upgrades were intended to provide added flexibility for additional training bunks, force protection personnel, special operations personnel and mixed genders on board the ships by increasing the ship's berthing by 11 up from the standard 174 berths. HMAS Arunta completed her upgrade and remaining units will follow. The Harpoon anti-ship missile is being fitted to Australian units. Work was completed on the first upgraded ship, HMAS Warramunga, in 2004. For a number of reasons related to operational considerations and the electronic environment, the Harpoon installation was relocated from its reserve space and wait position on O2 deck to a position on O1 deck forward of the bridge. Remaining units will be upgraded in due course. The Australian Defence Department decided to upgrade their Anzacs even before all ships were completed. The upgraded configuration includes AGM-84 Harpoon anti-ship missiles fitted in 2 quad launchers, evolved Sea Sparrow missiles quad packed in VLS enabling 32 missiles to be carried, 4 Nulka active missile decoys, and the petrol mine and obstacle avoidance sonar system. All upgrades and new builds are scheduled for completion by 2006. Subsequent upgrades will focus on anti-ship missile defence. Newcastle is a long-range escort, with roles including area air defence, anti-submarine warfare, surveillance, reconnaissance and interdiction. The ship is capable of countering simultaneous threats from the air, surface and subsurface. Powered by modern gas turbines, the ship can be underway from cold in 30 minutes. In addition, 2 forward-mounted retractable auxiliary propulsion units provide a secondary means of propulsion, plus excellent manoeuvrability in confined waters. Newcastle's principal weapons are the standard medium-range air-to-air missile and the Harpoon anti-ship missile. The ship is also equipped with a 76mm gun and the most effective of the close-in weapon systems, the Phalanx. Phalanx provides ships of many nations with a last chance defence against anti-ship missiles. Phalanx production started in 1978 with orders for 23 USN and 14 foreign military sales systems. Phalanx is the only deployed close-in weapon system capable of autonomously performing its own search, detect, evaluation, track, engage and kill assessment functions. For long-range anti-submarine tasks, the ship is equipped with a flight deck and 2 hangars for 2 S-70B-2 Seahawk helicopters. The ship's sensor package includes long-range radars for air and surface surveillance and is the second FFG to be fitted with the Australian designed and built Modular sonar. The Type 22 frigates were built in 3 batches. The latter 2 batches improved on the previous one. Intended to replace the Leander-class frigates, the early Type 22 ships were primarily designed for the anti-submarine role. The first 2 batches were the first and so far only British warships to delete a main gun from the design. The first 2 ships were built with an alternate funnel design and without torpedo tubes. The last 4 Batch 2 members were designed to carry either 2 Lynx helicopters or a single Sea King or EH-101 helicopter. The Batch 3 ships were further lengthened and incorporated for the first time a 4.5-inch gun forward in place of the Exocet launchers on the earlier batches. Although retaining the 2 Seawolf launchers, Exocet was replaced with 8 Harpoon launchers. These ships also include command facilities. As of 2005, all Batch 1 and 2 ships have been paid off, and most have been sold or scrapped. Only the 4 Batch 3 ships remain in active service. Carrier development is slower than destroyer and frigate classes. The French Navy's conventionally powered Clemencia is typical of a post-World War II aircraft carrier, and due to the cost remained in service until 1997, after serving for 36 years. She was laid down in November 1955, launched in December 1957, and commissioned in November 1961. She's replaced by a 4th-generation aircraft carrier called Charles de Gaulle. The Air Group was at one time made up of about 40 planes, and as aviation advances took place, the carrier's inventory of aircraft changed. A typical contingent included 2 Eurocopter Dauphin Pedro helicopters, 2 Super Freelon helicopters, and 4 Dassault Étenard IVPs. 8 Vought Crusaders gave the carrier its all-weather interception capability. Plans were considered to upgrade the Crusader to the F-18 Hornet. 8 single-prop Breguet-Alise aircraft that were used mainly as submarine killers. They were armed with lightweight torpedoes, depth charges, and a variety of air-to-surface weapons. The Clemenceau was the 8th aircraft carrier of the French Navy, and from the 60s to the 90s, she was the backbone of the French Navy, along with her sister ship, the Foch. During her career, she sailed more than 1 million nautical miles in 3,125 days at sea, on all the seas of the world. Her main missions included 1982 to 1984, the Civil War in Lebanon, 1987 to 1988, Iran-Iraq War, 1990 the First Gulf War, and from 1993 to 1996, the war in Yugoslavia. The Super Étenard had been developed in parallel with the new air-launched version of the Aerospatiale's anti-shipping missile, the AM-39 Exocet, and these were supplied to Argentina as well. At the time of the Falklands War, Argentina had taken delivery of 5 Super Étenards and 5 Exocets. All 5 of the missiles were used during the conflict. Britain, along with the USSR, took a different track in carrier design and built vessels that evolved around vertical takeoff and landing fighter bombers. The Invincible-class aircraft carrier is a design currently in use by the Royal Navy. There are 3 carriers of this class in operation: HMS Invincible, HMS Illustrious, and HMS Ark Royal. The class design was for an escort carrier class and for anti-submarine warfare with 6 helicopters and command capability. The helicopter load was then increased to 9, and the vessel was again redesigned to a 19,500-ton carrier. The successful development of the Sea Harrier meant that the plan was reworked again to include a small complement of these STOVL aircraft. Prior to 1982, Invincible's air group consisted purely of Sea King anti-submarine aircraft and Sea Harrier aircraft. Typically, 9 Sea Kings and 4 or 5 Sea Harriers were embarked. This was due to the fact that the original envisioned mission for the ships was to provide the heart of the ASW Hunter killer groups in the North Atlantic during a war against the Soviet Union. In that context, the main weapon of the carrier would not be its fighter aircraft, but its ASW helicopters. The fighters were on board to shoot down the occasional Soviet maritime patrol aircraft nosing around the ships and its escorts. The Falklands War changed all of that, since it proved that Britain still needed to retain the capability to use carrier air power in its traditional role of power protection, both over land and against enemy fleets. It became clear after the war that the Harrier should be a permanent feature of the three carriers. Another addition was a new type of Sea King, airborne early warning version. Illustrious carried the first examples of the type when it was rushed south in the aftermath of the Falklands to relieve Invincible of its guard duty around the islands. In the aftermath of the Falklands, the typical air group was 3 AEW Sea Kings, 9 ASW Sea Kings and 8 or 9 Sea Harriers. In more recent years, 3 other changes have occurred. One of those was the removal of the Sea Dart system, creating an increased deck parking for aircraft. The ships have also been fitted to handle the new Merlin helicopters in the Carrier Airborne ASW role. Recently, Invincible was decommissioned and will remain mothballed until 2010. Illustrious is planned to decommission in 2012 and Ark Royal in 2015. As 2 new much larger aircraft carriers are planned. Britain has recently declared its plans to acquire 2 new 4th generation carriers. The new deal means BAE Systems will build 2 supercarriers along with Thales, a French company. Most of the work will be carried out in various UK shipyards. The vessels will be built in several sections before bringing them together for final assembly and fitting in Scotland. The 60,000-ton carriers will be the biggest British warships ever built and are approximately 3 times the size of the current Invincible-class carriers. They will rank alongside the most formidable and complex weapon systems deployed by any country in the world. An example of the latest 4th generation of warship is the USS Winston S. Churchill. It is the US Navy's newest and most advanced warship. The USS Winston S. Churchill is the first warship to be named after a foreign leader since the American War of Independence in 1776. She is perhaps the world's most powerful destroyer. A 700 million pound ship with the equivalent power of an entire fleet of Second World War battleships. Her mission is to conduct prompt, sustained combat operations at sea. The 9,600-ton warship has a crew of 350 American officers on board. The ship's name celebrates the close relationship between the US and Britain and demonstrates the ongoing affinity of such a strong coalition.